There is no more important or controversial issue right now than fracking. Fracking is the process by which rocks under the earth are fractured, literally broken up, releasing the gas that's trapped inside so it can then be piped to the surface and sent on its way to heat, cool, and light our homes, offices, and factories, as well as to fuel our cars and trucks. Fracking is a big deal. It could be a game changer for the future of America. But like everything else, fracking has both risks and benefits. And we want you to decide which outweighs the other, more risk or more benefit. In short, we want you to decide whether you support or oppose fracking. First, we want you to listen to a couple of commercials that are going to try and sway you in one direction and then the other. After that, we'll talk to a very objective observer and try and get the facts of the matter. So here we go with the commercials.
Every day, all around the world, energy is being produced to power our lives. Well, energy development comes with some risk. North America's natural gas producers are committed to safely and responsibly providing generations of cleaner burning energy for our country. Drilling thousands of feet below fresh water sources within self-contained well systems. And using state-of-the-art monitoring technologies, rigorous practices help ensure our operations are safe and clean for our communities and the environment. We're America's natural gas.
Natural gas deep in the earth can now be blasted free with a technique called fracking. It's said to pose no threat to the environment or future generations.
But methane, hazardous chemicals, and radioactivity have gotten into drinking water near drilling sites. Some people can set their faucets on fire, and people are getting sick.
Protect our water before it's too late. Learn what you can do now at frackattack.org.
Now let's talk to an objective observer. Journalist Tom Wilbur is author of the book Under the Surface: Fracking, Fortunes, and the Fate of the Marcellus Shale. Morning, Tom. We could use your help in explaining what fracking's supporters say are its biggest benefits and what its critics say are the biggest risks. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Risk number one, safely disposing of chemical-laced water. How big a risk is this?
This is a big risk, and one reason is because we're not quite sure what's in this water. The companies that produce this water don't have to report its contents to the government that oversees it. They're exempt from certain rules that require them to report what's in the water. We know that for fracking they use hazardous chemicals, but we're not sure exactly what those chemicals are. So without understanding all the details about what goes into the ground for fracking, we're not quite sure what comes out, and that can cause problems with getting rid of the water.
Okay, Tom, is the issue more one of transparency, or do you think if we did know what was in that water, there would be some chemicals that we would cringe at?
Well, I think there will definitely be chemicals that would make you cringe. But if you know what they are, you can safely dispose of them. So I think that the issue is transparency. Before you can safely handle these chemicals, you have to know what they are. And I think it's very important for the people to understand what's going on. As a journalist, the people's right to know is very important to me. So I would label that as a high risk.
Okay, and last point on this. On a scale of 1 to 10, how big a risk is this?
I would say that's a 10.
Okay.
Being the highest risk.
Gotcha. Let's move on to benefit number 1. Fracking produces natural gas and gives us a vast domestic energy source with many different uses. How big a benefit is this?
That is a huge benefit. Right now, we need energy. Our country needs energy, and we need energy that we can produce domestically without having to depend on other countries to do it. And there is a vast resource in these shale gas reserves underneath a lot of the United States. And now with fracking, we have means to get at sources. We can produce both natural gas and oil using fracking. And we know that we need natural gas to heat our homes. to cook with, to run businesses, and also to make a lot of the products, the things we wear, the clothes we wear, fertilizers, plastic wraps, all these things we make from petroleum. And so that's very important that we have resources to do that.
Am I correct that for every drop of oil and every ounce of natural gas that we increase production for here in this country, that's one less that we have to import from abroad?
That's a very good way of looking at it, yes. And as we know, a lot of the problems with foreign relations come to our dependency on oil. So in the Middle East, we have to deal with a lot of countries, some who are hostile to our way of life and our culture, but we still are very dependent on them for our oil.
Okay, Tom, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how big a benefit is this?
I would say that's the biggest benefit. So I would rate that as a 10 also.
Okay, so we have a risk at a 10 and we have a benefit at a 10.
I think those are both right at the top.
All right, let's move on to risk number 2. Consumes too much of the U.S.'s limited water supply. We got to have water to drink. We got to have water for crops. And now we're going to use a lot of water to get this natural gas out of the ground. Is there enough, or are we simply going to be consuming too much if we frack?
That's one of these areas where there's still a lot of debate and a lot of uncertainty. And one of the reasons is we haven't developed the shale gas plays to their full potential yet. And as we get this shale, or as we get the gas and oil out of the ground, we're figuring out new ways to do it. And one of the ways the companies are looking at is recycling some of the fluids. So this would solve a couple different things. It would take some of those chemicals out, even though we're not sure what they are. If we did know what they are, we could find a way to get those out of the water, and it would allow them to reuse the water. So they'd become more efficient with their water use over time. In some places, water use is more important than others. In the Northeast, where I live, we have a lot more water resources. In some places, like in Texas and Colorado, they have much fewer water resources. That's not to say that water preservation is not important. It's very important. And the question about water consumption is important. It just is a moving target right now. How can we best do this and preserve water? I will add that there are some ideas about getting the gas out of the ground without using water. There's some emerging technologies about fracking with propane. Propane, we know, comes from the ground, and it would be a substance that they could use to put back into the ground to break apart the rock without using water. That has not been proven yet, but people are looking for ways to do that.
Scale of 1 to 10, how big a risk?
I would say I'm going to give it a 7.
Okay. Let's move on to benefit number 2. This is one we hear about a lot in the newspapers and on TV, and it's certainly central to the political campaigns coming up here. Fracking creates lots of jobs and wealth for Americans. How big a benefit?
In the short term, that's a very big benefit, because there's no doubt that there's some landowners who are farmers. As we say, they're land rich and cash poor. That means they own a lot of property, they've farmed a lot of property, they may have inherited that from their families who are farmers, but now we know in some areas of the country farming is no longer a viable living. The small family farm is having tougher economic times to sustain itself because of the economies. So if for landowners who own a lot of land and can't farm it productively or economically, that's a very big benefit for them to get royalty payments and lease payments from gas owners. There's people who might be able to get jobs on drilling rigs. The industry will say there's enough jobs for everybody. I've learned that some of these jobs are specialty jobs, and they're jobs that go to certain people that understand how to operate the rigs, but they don't necessarily go to the local areas. So there's some give and take on that.
It sounds as if the idea of job creation has been oversold to Americans a little bit. Am I right in what you're saying?
Yes, I would say that it's a benefit, but I would say that the industry tends to overplay that benefit. The other question is, how long do these jobs last for? And that also gets to how long does the resource last for? It's not a renewable resource. These jobs come and go as the wells come and go, and they move around some.
Scale of 1 to 10 again. Job creation, wealth creation, how big a benefit?
I would say that's a 5.
Okay. Number 3, under the risk category. Fracking slows the development of renewable energy sources. Basically, we take our eye off solar and wind and we put the emphasis on natural gas, which in turn delays the ultimate development of a green energy economy.
Yes, I think that is a very big risk. And I'll just preface that a little bit. We've heard two sides to this. We've heard that natural gas development through fracking is a bridge to the future. In other words, the industry says, we know this is not a renewable resource, we know it is limited, but what we can do is use it to produce a lot of energy over the next 20, 30, 40 years while we're learning how to do the renewable energy better. We can learn how to do wind farms better and solar panels better, and we can get better at conserving our energy, which is very important. However, there's another side to that, and that is we put all this energy into building pipelines and drilling wells and bringing the energy to the homes. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of money. And the attention, as you say, Bill, really gets to be how can we get this next drop of gas out of the ground? And people tend to forget about solar energy because they don't feel they need it in the short term. We're getting gas coming online. We have what's called a market glut. That means right now we have actually more natural gas than we know what to do with, and they're storing parts of it. That's a good thing because it lowers the price of natural gas. But it also gives people a sense that we have all the gas we need, and they tend to forget about the importance of developing renewable energy.
Okay. Risk number 3, how big is a risk of slowing development of renewable energy sources?
I would say 8.5.
Okay. I got to ask, why the half?
I would give it a 9. It's up near the top, but I might even be inclined to give it a 9. It's an important thing. I'm trying to convey an important thing.
I gotcha. All right. Finally, benefit number 3, and although we're covering this at the end, this, I think, is another major point that we need to get in here. Benefit number 3, the more natural gas we use, the less atmospheric carbon dioxide we have, because by substituting natural gas for coal and power plants, we are reducing CO2 levels. How big a benefit?
That is a benefit. I would say that's also oversold by the industry. But I'll add that getting off of coal dependence is very important because coal puts a lot of bad things into the air in addition to CO2. There's mercury and particulate matter, and it's not as clean burning as natural gas. And that's one reason you can light a natural gas stove in your home, cook your dinner on it, but it'd be very hard to do that with coal. Coal would make you, if you don't have the right venting equipment, would be dirty, probably make you cough. If you have asthma, it would really act up. But natural gas puts a fair amount of, it's CO2, not as much as coal, but it puts methane into the air. And methane is also a very potent greenhouse gas that can contribute to greenhouse gases and global warming. And there's been, people haven't looked at this so much because they just, when you burn natural gas in your home, it seems so clean, people have taken it for granted that it's not a big carbon producer or global warming contributor. But now some people from Cornell University and other places are studying this, and they're learning that when you factor in the methane that escapes from wells when they drill it, the methane that escapes from the ground, with all the trucks needed to take the gas out of the ground, producing diesel exhaust and other things, there's a hidden cost to this, and there's more CO2 and other things that go into the air than the industry makes out to be.
But if things are handled properly and carefully, can we maintain a very safe level of releases of methane and those other chemicals?
Yes, there's a way to minimize that, and one example is flaring. Anybody that lives around natural gas wells will probably see this at some time. It's pretty spectacular. Right after they drill a well, the pipe comes up out of the ground and it releases a huge flame. And what this is excess pressure from the well being burned off. And before they can tie it into the pipeline and get everything squared away and all the pressure valves and everything's locked down, they have to release all this extra gas. And with that comes a lot of extra emissions. And some areas, including New York State now, are considering ways to make it illegal to flare these wells while they're producing them. That would be a good example of a big release into the atmosphere that could be prevented.
Okay, scale of 1 to 10, how big a benefit is fracking in terms of reducing atmospheric carbon dioxide?
I'll say a 6.
All right. Tom, I want to thank you for all of your very objective opinions. Tom Wilbur, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Bill. I'm glad to do it.
Fracking has both risks and benefits. We want you to decide which outweighs the other. In other words, are fracking's risks too great to proceed, or are fracking's benefits so great that we need to proceed?